going to talk to you about something that I talk about quite a lot in my course, in the course that I've been teaching, which is going to be taken over by Sakuna in the future, but which is the technology strategy course. And I want to talk to you about one topic. I'm going to do it really briefly. In the class, we would spend 3 hours on this, but I'm going to do it very quickly and just hit the very highest points because I think this is one of the most important technology developments that has happened over the last couple of decades, maybe the last 30 years, and that's the advent of digital platforms. And I want to talk about why that's important very quickly, and then talk about why it's happening and why it's not going to go away anytime soon. So let's start with this. This is just a list of the 10 largest companies in the world by market cap, by total value in 2000. And if you look down this list, there's a couple of things I would like you to notice. One is that there's only a couple of what we would now call probably technology firms in the sense of digital technology firms on here. Microsoft, still, which will still a very, very important company. And at the bottom, Nokia. So in 2000, Nokia was still one of the largest firms in the world. And there's lots of other stuff. There's also Walmart retail, Intel, another technology company, World at Shell. There's a bunch of other kinds, a number of different industries are represented in this list. And also look at the market caps. Even if we adjust for inflation, the most valuable company, is still only $1 trillion at this point. But it could be on the list being only worth 329 billion adjusted for inflation. So this is kind of a very mixed list, and it's very relatively small compared to the sizes of the companies we're looking at today when we look at the largest companies in the world. So here's today's list. This is from about a month ago. About 2 months ago. I see a couple of things I want you to note. Now, almost everything on this list is a technology company, with the exception of Saudi Aramco, which is a national oil company, of course, and Berkshire Hathaway, which is an investment company, which made a lot of money on technology. But taking those two off, almost all the rest are technology companies. The biggest of them, Apple, let's skip over NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, Meta, those are all platform companies. And their valuations are huge. You look at Apple, 3.5 trillion, NVIDIA, 3.3 trillion. NVIDIA's grown quite a bit since even this time. Microsoft now 3 trillion. These are huge valuations. And the concentration in technology is, I think, really notable. And also, I think the fact that these companies, especially Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, Meta, Tesla, arguably, are all platform companies, right? It's even in the name now of Meta Platforms, right? Which is telling. What's going on here? What has happened? How have we gone from this mixed list of companies with big valuations, but not nearly this kind of valuations we have of the companies today? And how do we go to a situation, and why do we go to a situation where there's so many of them are platform companies? What's going on? Well, the idea of a platform is pretty simple. Platform is just something that holds something up, right? That's in English. It's something that holds things up. And the way we're talking about it today, it's a little bit more specific. We're talking about platforms in a technology sense. So it's a technological system that holds some elements fixed, letting others vary, right? It's a system that constrains and enables. It enables people to do things more easily, but it also constrains what they can do around this platform. Platforms have been around for a long time. Here's one from the automotive industry. They discovered in the 1970s that they could reduce the cost of their production dramatically by focusing on a couple of platforms. In this case, this is a chassis, an engine, things, and then they put different bodies and different kinds of accessories and different things on it, and actually produce many different cars using one platform. Right? In this case, an automobile platform, but still a platform exactly analogous to the digital platforms that I want to talk about. There's many of these across all kinds of industries, these kind of technology platforms, but the one that's really gotten to be so dominant is these software platforms. And software platforms are a software platform with some sort of interfaces that allow people to do stuff on different sides of the platform and engage together using the platform to do that. So in this case, there's a picture here. This would be something like Apple. The platform is the Apple operating system, and external people can use the Apple platform to develop apps, which then users of the apps. Okay, you can use them through their phone. So you can use, you can use Zoom on your phone. If you have an Apple phone, Zoom has worked with Apple and worked at the interface to develop app and a Zoom app that runs on the Apple phone. And you, as a user of the Apple phone, can then use the Zoom app. And Apple is in the middle. Platforms are so powerful, partially because they create high degrees of innovation and lots of interest from users or consumers, and they can sit in the middle and actually take some of the value that's generated on an ongoing basis. So this has turned out to be an incredibly powerful model, this sort of software platform allowing different parties on different what's called sides of the platform to participate and engage with each other in a structured and monitored and safe way. And for the platform, it turns out to be incredibly powerful in terms of generating value and generating profits. There's lots of different kinds of software platforms. I'm not going to go into this. You're all very familiar with social platforms, things like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. But there's lots of other ones, mobilization platforms to somehow get groups of people doing things, learning platforms like LinkedIn Learning. It's a whole bunch of different kind of platforms that are really, really have exploded in the last 20 years. Why has this happened and why is it important? Well, the answer is this: network effects. Network effect is a technology has a network effect when more people having it and more people using it improves the value. So a fax machine, one person having one fax machine is completely useless. There's no one to send a fax to. The more people have a fax machine, the more value fax machines have because the more people you could send faxes to. Same with your mobile phone. The more people who had a mobile phone, the more people who have a mobile phone, the more value having a mobile phone has because you can connect to more people and call more people because they all have mobile phones too. So these kind of network effects drive people to join platforms where there's already lots of participants, right? And the most important kind of network effect is what we call cross-site network effects. I'm going to use Amazon as an example. So in cross-site network effects, there's buyers on one side of the platform and there's sellers on the other side of the platform. And the more buyers there are, the happier the sellers get, and the more the sellers want to participate in the Amazon network. That's a cross-site effect from buyers to sellers, and vice versa. The more sellers there are, the more interesting it is for buyers to join. And these network effects are exponential. So as more and more people join as customers and as more and more people join as sellers, it becomes more and more valuable to be on Amazon. And as that scales, and this is why for these platforms, scaling of users is so important. As that scales, then the platform becomes really unstoppable because the dynamics of these network effects just start pulling in more and more and more of buyers and sellers in this case. And it becomes very hard to start a competing platform because why would people switch to the new platform when everyone's on the old one, right? So this is a very powerful effect, and it creates a couple of things that are really explain what we saw in terms of the firms that are incredibly valuable now because they're far along this process. They're creating a huge amount of value for the people that use them, and they're also incredibly attractive. It's very hard to leave them, and it's very hard to not join them because all your friends are on that social media platform, so you need to be on it too, right? We see that with TikTok, which may or may not be shut down in the next few days. So what's the bottom line? What does this all mean? Well, thinking about these platforms, these digital platforms, as being this kind of system that holds some elements in place, but lets people to innovate around that. They're both sources of lots of innovation, whether it's innovation in social media content or it's innovation in software in terms of the apps on your phone, whatever kind of phone you have. But also the nature of the platform constrains that innovation and shapes that innovation, sometimes for good and sometimes not. These platforms create these powerful network effects, and these network effects grow exponentially. So these become natural monopolies. It's actually better for all the users if everyone's on the same platform, but that gives that platform a huge amount of power. So if you're wondering why Elon Musk would choose to buy a platform and then use it in a way that would reduce value so dramatically in terms of its market cap, X is actually valuable just because it's such a dominant platform of communication. So if what you want to do is communicate, owning one of these platforms is an incredibly powerful way to do it. Although if you don't do it in the right way, of course you lose value in his case because the advertisers have left the platform and there's more than two sides to that platform, but the power of the platform remains, and you still have many, 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 many people on X communicating because they want to connect with each other, right? So you have these huge network effects. So this creates huge problems for the government. How do you regulate platforms? Because actually having monopoly platforms is creates the most value for users, but at the same time creates really powerful, incredibly valuable companies that are maybe too powerful and have too much ability to influence governments and influence markets. So this is a really interesting new problem, and companies are well aware of how these platforms work, and governments are still working through how do we regulate these platforms? How do we regulate Google? How do we regulate Meta? How do we do this that's best for the people of the country and or of best for society, but also allows these companies to generate value in the way that they can. So really interesting business problems, really interesting kind of social questions, really interesting impacts on how we live, and exactly the kind of thing that we like to talk about on the MTM program.